So it's July 18th. It's a Thursday, 2024. I'm at Grandpa Bob's again, and we're going to continue on with the questions we got for Grandpa here. So these next ones are about starting your life, kind of, is kind of what these ones are more around. Um, so one of the first ones I got here is, who did you want to be in high school, and who did you end up becoming?
Okay, well, most of the time I think I really didn't have a clear direction of what I was going to do, what I wanted to be. I was always really interested in wildlife, and so I did. That's consistent with what happened to me with my first degree in zoology, with being president of the BC Wildlife Park, etc. Starting endangered species programs, breeding programs. So. Um, I thought about
What breeding programs did you start?
lots. Adix, antelope, Siberian tigers.
And that was all like
Uh,
what's like the Kamloops
well, it used to be the
Zoo
Kamloops
or
Wildlife Park. It used to be, some people would call it the Kamloops Zoo, but zoo's an outdated word. And I was instrumental in us joining an organization called, I don't even, it's called CASBA, Canadian Association of Zoological Parks and Aquariums, or something like that. Um, and What the SSP programs, species survival programs, are is the aim is to protect the species uh, and until there's enough to put back in the wild. Some of them aren't even in the wild anymore.
mm,
Um, so a lot of the zoos, which traditionally had animals behind bars, are now definitely more correctly um, called wildlife uh, parks, etc.
mm-hmm.
And so that really interested me. And um, so in high school, that was one of my main interests. I loved National Geographic. I loved reading about animals, and so even though I didn't do that professionally after my zoology degree, it was always a big interest. So that's how I gravitated to first of all vice president, and I was a head of animal acquisitions, and uh, got us involved with species survival programs. So
Hmm.
that satisfied that. I didn't have to work in the field for money. Um,
It was like a volunteer or like a community uh,
well, yeah, I guess you call it
spirit out of
volunteer.
it.
There's certainly, you don't get any remuneration. But also in high school, I distinctly remember, and I've always been conscious of this, that I was in grade 8 or 9, uh, and in some particular class, we were asked what you want to be when you finish your education. And in grade 8 or 9, I actually said a dentist, you know, and uh, and then I kind of forgot about it till I was way into my degree in zoology, thinking, what the hell am I going to do with a degree in zoology? And so, you know, anyway, hopefully that answers your question. I don't know. Um,
So the second part of that one was like, who did you become? So I mean, I know you were a dentist. So how long were you a dentist for? What was
40 from I graduated in 1974, and I retired in 2019. So pretty close to 45 years. Um, Two different practices, 21 years in Kamloops, 24 years in Salt Spring. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Do I miss it? No. I wouldn't want to be doing dentistry in my 70s. So it was wonderful. It was fine. It allowed me to do so many things, earn a good living. Uh, but I don't miss it, really. I don't miss it.
okay? Yeah, I always remember liking when I was a kid getting to go to Grandpa's for dentists. And like, and I know some people are averse to them, but I never felt like that because it was like, oh, it's grandpa, it's just what grandpa does, uh, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so you talked about what your career was. So what was your first job? You remember?
Well, it depends what you call it a job. I did many things for money, even as a child. Uh, what say look, if you take the age of 14 when I moved to Richmond,
Mm-hmm.
I remember several things I did for money in Vancouver, and again I wrote about them from selling donuts door to door.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Did you make the donuts? Or did you go buy
no,
them
no,
and then?
no. It came in. There was a truck that would drive around, and they mostly did it on Saturdays, I think, or weekends, because they used people like me to go door to door, and so I wouldn't have to go even maybe more than a block from my house, or anyway, I'd meet the truck somewhere. They'd give me a whole bunch of donuts, and I don't know. I can't remember actually what happened when you sold those donuts. How did you get more donuts? I don't know. But the truck was circling and circulating.
Mm.
There was no cell phones or anything. So somehow they found you and said, "Oh, you need some more donuts." but but so on a Saturday in particular, maybe it was Sunday too. I can't remember. A lot of people got used to, oh, the donut guy's going to be here soon. And they're having coffee, and they were really nice fresh donuts with sugar and cinnamon, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anyway, so those kinds of things I did to make money, and I also wrote and remember things like scavenging building sites for scrap metal. Uh, Sometimes I think, did I really steal that, or was that just junk that I picked up and got money for? I think it was mostly discarded stuff, things that weren't used,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd take them down to the scrap yard and get money for it. And the same thing with. And I had a paper route, and briefly, and then just after I got my paper route, we had to move to Richmond. But uh, those are the kind of things I did for money. But when I got to Richmond and I was 14 years old, 14 to 16, 2 years that I spent there, I did a lot of picking fruit. Very back-breaking, tough work.
In Richmond, like in
Yeah,
orchards.
strawberries were what I picked mostly, and they're not easy to pick. You either got to get down close to the ground, or you got to bend over, and you do that for 8 hours. And I know. Sometimes I probably didn't even make $2 for the day. Um,
It'd be by the weight, I'm
that
guessing.
Yeah, you take your container, and when it was full, and they weigh it, record it, and tough way to make a buck.
And then I think you told me a story once. Your first job out of high school was that the railway story you told me about? Or were you in high school? Or was that before grade
Well, no, I
13?
was
Or...
in. I had several jobs. I had jobs every summer. I mean, when we moved to Kamloops, I I I worked at the motel. I
Yeah.
was taking bags to the room, or I cleaned the pool, or whatever needed to be done around there. Um,
And your dad paid you for those things, or was that just
well,
like helping the
I don't
family
know if
out?
my dad paid me, or actually the Slumber Lodge Corporation paid me. I'm not sure,
Mm.
but I think it was the company that paid me probably. Um, and So yeah, and then the first really kind of different job I had was after I graduated from from grade 13, as I went to work for the railway in Ashcroft. I had my own house, and it was a strange little house. It had nothing. There was no furniture. There was bed springs, I think.
Like
Maybe
the
there was.
company rented it, or you had to go pick
Oh
one out
no,
and
the
rent it?
company owned it.
Yeah.
It was called a section house, where it was built a long time ago for employees to use, and that was a good experience to see how hard you have to work to make any kind of money. I think it was $2.20 or something an hour, and You had to work for it. You really had to work.
So that was probably what mid
60,
to late 1960s,
67.
67.
It was. I only did it for from June to August.
This must have been hot.
Oh God, it was hot. I mean, I knew nothing about the fact that no, you can't just drink water. You gotta watch your electrolytes. And I actually ended up in the hospital in Ashcroft overnight because I'd been drinking all this water and not replacing electrolytes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was interesting. And nobody came to visit me, my parents or nobody, friends, anything. I was just in the hospital by myself, and they said, "Oh, I think we better keep you here at least till tomorrow." Um, yeah, Ashcroft, one of the hottest places in the whole country. You know,
Yeah. I didn't do that much labor. I remember 2 summers I did a concrete cutting with my dad.
yeah,
But I think that was really good for me, and maybe for you too, and it just made me that much more want to study
sure,
and and
and
and
not do that kind of thing
and
for the
not
rest
do
of my
that.
life.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's a lesson indeed when you have to work with your body like that.
yeah.
So the next one I got here is what's one of your funniest memories you have of high school or of when you were a young adult?
Funniest.
Yeah.
My funniest stories as a young adult. Hmm, hmm. I'm gonna have to think about that for a bit. You might want to go into the next question because nothing comes up immediately.
Okay.
Uh, Funniest story. Uh,
We can come back on
yeah,
that one.
sure. I don't know how to answer that one.
Is there anything wish you did differently starting out as a young adult upon graduation?
From high school,
Yeah, just in general with your life,
I don't think so. I don't. I don't have. I don't. Uh, in that period of my life, there's nothing pops out saying, oh, "I wish I'd blah blah." Um, I don't regret any decisions I made. Like, what a big one was like when I got out of dentistry in 1974 or just prior to that is like, okay, so where am I going to practice? And I actually didn't even have to think about it because uh, Kamloops was such a wonderful place to grow up. Those years from grade 11, 12, 13, and then going back there all the time because Jan's parents lived there. Um, I had I did entertain other areas, other places, but not really seriously. It was an easy choice, and I never regretted it.
that's good. Um, so this one is about uh your spouse. So when and where did you meet Granny, and what were they like?
I met her uh, when I was in grade 12, I believe. Let's see, 65. It was spring of '60s. It was actually Valentine's Day.
I shouldn't say spouse, your
Yeah, yeah,
ex-spouse,
no,
my
that's okay, that's
grandmother,
okay.
you know what
Yeah,
I mean.
I met her. I'd seen her. You notice girls at that age,
Yeah.
and I'd seen her. And I remember the coat she had on, and she'd be walking. I didn't know where she lived, but I remember her walking up this street, which I later learned is where her parents lived. Um, and and then the next thing was basically I went to this Valentine's Day dance by myself for some reason, probably because I didn't know who to ask to go, and you just at that time, like I said, I was in grade 12, and and she was there, and she was supposed to meet this other guy who didn't show up. So we got we danced. I took her for root beer after the
A
dance.
root beer.
Yeah. And that's how we met. I guess. And then I just started dating, and I honestly never dated anybody after that other than her. So, you know, is that weird? I don't know. Different, maybe. I mean, most of my friends didn't end up marrying their first serious girlfriend, but I did. So,
When did you know that you really liked them?
well, probably right away. You know, yeah, yeah.
Okay. What was it like being a parent for the first time, and do you wish you did anything differently as a parent?
Um, well, it was wonderful, I guess. I mean, you know, when you see somebody, when you have a child that's born, and you know that you help create it, and it's almost like partly cloning yourself, you know, and
Yeah.
uh, it was yeah, but I, I I mean, Jan was the one who was instrumental in saying in that fall of 1971, I want to have a baby. And it was like, I've been most of my life, oh, sure, okay, that's what you want. So, yeah, it was a cool experience. And the coolest part of, I don't know, for me, the coolest part was the fact that I got a job as an orderly in Royal Inman Hospital, and I was there in the delivery room when that was very uncommon, and watched the whole thing. It was cool. Um, uh, and of course, Ryan, the dad, was the first grandchild, and, for both my parents and her parents. And um, it was it's I won't say it's unique in that there are things that you remember differently about your first child,
Mm-hmm.
because just like the first time you do anything, it's different. It's not necessarily better, but it's different. And we were both super happy that she got pregnant as fast as she did, and she had the baby, and everything was good. And it just seemed totally natural and what was supposed to happen. So, you
Um, and then the other part of that was, do you wish you did anything differently? And I ask that because I have two sons now, and there is some things that I'm already noticing that I would maybe do a little differently, but maybe as time goes on in the grand scheme, it doesn't look as important as maybe you feel it is.
well, like, I don't know. I think it may be in the last tape. You got me on tape as talking about my dad's belt coming off and the pants going down. I mean, I don't remember ever doing that, but I spanked Ryan and Todd. I don't remember ever spanking Aaron because you know I don't know. I was growing out of it. I decided not to, or because she was a girl. I don't know, but I think I was less disciplinary than my father was, but I felt okay about that because I thought, you know, that doesn't seem the right thing to do. It just doesn't kind of fit with how I think I should
Mm-hmm.
respond. So there was punishment. It would be things like go to your room and stuff like that. But uh, and I'm sure both of them, Todd and Ryan probably remember me spanking, remember being spanked. But that was a huge, that was a big change. I mean, I don't think in today's child rearing, uh, I'd be surprised if anybody does that. But you know, it was time to change that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, what's your favorite memory as a parent?
I don't
Or
know.
like what kind of comes to mind if I say, it might be hard to pick just
Okay,
one,
well,
but
no. Just doing things with the kids. Particularly when you said that, I think of one picture in particular, and I did it with all the kids. Is they would be on my shoulders, uh, and I would probably my left hand. It's very specific. My left hand was around their ankle,
yeah.
and they were on my shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
and it looked like, oh my God, are you sure he's not going to fall? And what? But never ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was always aware that, yeah, I got the ankle all right. And
Just having them close to you like that.
well, just like doing stuff like that as a family, or with, yeah, with the grandparents or whatever. Or I don't specifically remember, walking in the natural grasslands and ponderosa pine of Kamloops. Nice. I have very fond memories of Kamloops. I don't think I would ever move back there, but I think it was a great place to grow up, to practice, to have children. So, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, I go there sometimes with Candy when we're visiting my other grandmother,
mm-hmm.
and still it looks like a really nice kind of a bit of a slower, smaller town with a lot to offer.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty
Uh,
special. You know, lots of memories swimming at Riverside Park on the river or at the lakes, Paul Lake, Lac Lejeune, hiking. Remember when I say hiking, thing that comes to mind is a particular camping trip I did with the guy who was my best man and I was his, and going camping. And this one day we got lost.
this is what? When was he your best man? I thought you said your
I just
brother was. Maybe not.
no,
No. Okay.
no. My brother, I was my brother. I was Greg's best man,
Okay. Sorry.
but Greg was never mine. My
Sorry. Anyways, you went
Yeah,
hiking with your friend.
and and at the end of the day, we found we'd gone in a circle and we slept in a bunch of bales of hay on the top. And the next day, we carried on to try and find the place we were supposed to go to. And that particular night, we hadn't quite got there. We slept on the road, and we were each in the tire tracks, because it was kind of concave. It sounds ridiculous, but we just knew that nobody would come along, right? So
Yeah.
that's where we slept because it was cozy and weird. Yeah, great times.
Okay. So the next one is what was my father like as a child? What do you think of when you think of him as a
Well,
child?
he was tons of fun, uh, and very active, and definitely a challenge, the most challenging of the three.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I don't know whether I actually remember that because I had nobody to compare him to,
Mm-hmm.
or whether he just was. I think he was. He was challenging. Uh, but again, I don't know if that's because we didn't have any precedent of, like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Um, and kids are always doing that. They're testing, seeing how much they can get away with, or how much you know. So they just keep going until you set a boundary and say, no, that's enough. Don't get any closer, or no, you can't have any more, right? So
Yeah.
um, the learning experiences with the first child is, you kind of feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants, and
Mm-hmm.
then the second one is like, oh, yeah, I know what to do now.
Yeah. I think how I kind of would summarize it with, my Ryan and Danny is with Ryan everything feels reactive, right? Like what's he doing? And everything with Danny is like maybe preventative or like what's kind of somewhat gonna come.
Yeah, and as a result of that, they grow up different. Like you just treat them differently. There's no way you can say, "Well, I treated them all the same," because that's bullshit. You don't. You the first one's an experiment, and you're going, "Yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that," or "Glad I did that." But then you think you're a pro, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, probably by the time you figure it all out, they all move out and you're done.
and then when the third one's a girl, then you're a real softie. I was, you know. It was like she got treated a lot differently, just because I never had any sisters, and hadn't had a first girl child.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was kind of like young life now, or just kind of like some general life questions I had. They're pretty broad, but yeah. So we'll move into those. So the first one I got here is what comes to mind when I say, what's the best advice you think you've ever received, and who did you get it from?
Best advice. I don't know whether it came across as advice, but I don't know. Maybe I even, I'm not sure I maybe answered this question last time, but I was in grade 12 or maybe even grade 13. I don't remember. And I think I had what was just a kind of routine appointment with the counselor. He was an old guy. He must have been 70. I don't know. He seemed like that. Maybe he wasn't quite that old, but
You're older than that now.
he, yeah,
But yeah.
he said, well, you know, what's your plan? What are you going to do after high school? And I said, well, I'm going to go to university. And I said something about, you know, I think I can do that, and I think I'll do well. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, I think you will, you know. And um, just that one guy saying a few words pushed me over the top as far as confidence and solidified the choice. And I think I talked about it last time, but you know, it's worth repeating that one of the reasons that Kamloops was such a pivotal time for me is that I went up there and the friends I made, without an exception, every single one of them was going to university. And the year before, when I was in Richmond, nobody ever talked about it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and I, my guess is nobody went. And if I went back to when I was on 23rd Avenue, East Vancouver, lower income people, lower aspirations, nobody went. Nobody went into any kind of higher education that I'm aware of. You know, and that's really interesting because I think that you know that your circle of friends who you're associating with by the time you get to the end of high school, um, you're going to live your life more similar to them than the greater population, um, because the values are already made. You're already determined your values, and for the most part, they don't change. You know, you've got a plan for your life by the time you're out of high school,
Mm-hmm.
a tentative plan, or at least the beginning of a plan. And I think in some situations where because of poverty or because of parenting or where you live or income, if you can't establish that by the time you're 16 to 18, then it's questionable if you ever will.
Your values, you think?
If you ever will have a plan for a lot more,
Yeah.
uh, and it, you know that's part of why we go to you know part of why I went to university. I wanted more. I wanted. Um, I didn't want to settle for some low-paying job that could end up going nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
and just do that for the rest of my life. It just wasn't okay with me. So yeah, probably got off topic there, but I don't know.
No, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, the question was, what's the best advice? And
Have a plan.
what and so I think what you're saying is have a plan, and uh you know, somebody having faith in you
Yeah, that's huge.
is kind of what I took away from what you were saying with the counselor. And
Hmm.
I actually think I started to get that, but I think I only got that in my late 20s, early 30s. But maybe that was a distinctful thing for you in your upbringing, is that it sounds like maybe you kind of you got that push. You kind of said, you
Well,
know what, I can do this.
I mean, he said that, I think you can. I think you will. I don't know. Um, my parents never even said that to me,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. Or at least if they did, I have no memory of it, and I think I would have remembered it. Um, and of course, they didn't even graduate from high school. Those were the times, you
Yeah.
know, and so I think they were careful not to give me some advice like, "Oh, I think you should go to university," because I mean, they were happy I did,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say university, it's similar to what you did. You didn't go to university, but you went for further education. You immersed yourself in something that was going to have a future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my fear about a lot of young people today is that they don't have goals, they don't have aspirations, um, and they don't know how to set a goal and work towards it. Like, you don't have to take huge steps. You can take little steps. You'll still get there.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, one of the reasons I love doing this interview is I hope sometimes somebody in the future, whether it's my grandkids, great grandkids, or whatever, uh, will get something out of it that'll be positive and assist them in being happy and this and being and aspiring to something more than they are at the time they maybe hear it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because honestly, the fact that I went to university, got 2 university degrees, practiced dentistry for 45 years, I mean, it gives you a good feeling. Like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
made some mistakes along the way, but overall, I'm happy. I'm happy with the effort I put into life, and I'm happy with how I was rewarded. So,
That's really good. That's I really like what you shared there. All right, a little bit of a turn.
ta-da!
Um, so looking back over the course of your life, like you said, some big successes. Uh, what is one thing that comes to mind when I say that's embarrassing and that you may even still cringe at thinking about today? Is there anything that pops into your mind?
Oh, now you're getting to the hard ones.
Yeah, some of these are gonna be a little uncomfortable. And again, if you don't want to, that's okay. But if you do, then you're more than welcome to.
Well, everybody's going to be listening to this, Bob. um, how did you phrase that again? Just I want to get. I want to get.
All right. I said, looking back,
Yes.
what's one embarrassing memory you still cringe at thinking about it today?
Well, I
And
don't know whether I have. I don't think of it as an embarrassing memory, but I question what I did, of course. Uh, and that would be, my decision to end my first marriage.
mm-hmm,
Huge. Um, I couldn't at that time imagine how it affected everybody else in all the different ways that it did. And obviously, even now at 76 years old, I think about it and I go, oh, that's really interesting. How did that happen? Why did I do that? Uh, do I regret it? And when I get to regret, I can't actually say I regret it. personally,
So just so you know, it doesn't say regret in the question.
yeah, okay.
But that's great that you're saying that you don't regret it, so to say. But
I just see it as one of the things that happened in my life without trying to figure out, because I can't figure out why would I do that? What, how did
mhm.
that happen?
How did those events
Yeah,
happen?
how did that all transpire? Uh, but I would say whatever happens in your life, don't spend too much time thinking or regretting any decisions you made. I mean, you can think about them once in a while, but you know, you don't want to live a life where you're filled with guilt of thinking, oh, gee, maybe I made a big mistake, maybe I made the wrong decision. Things just happen. To me, it's not much. I don't like to make it trivial because it isn't. But it's like your decision to do something in life, and all of a sudden it doesn't work out that well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you. I mean, the truth is, you're as much as we like to think we are, we're not always in control. We're really not. I mean, I know what people would say, well, that's bullshit, but but um,
What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate a little bit?
what I mean is that it's not easy to think about things you've done in your life, decisions you've made, without recognizing that that's just the way it was. It was. It's the way it happened, and would you do it over again differently? Uh, I don't know. I can't even imagine it because it didn't happen that way. It's like you go, but yeah, but I didn't do that. I did B instead of A, and you gotta let it go because you know you can't dwell on that for the rest of your life. You can make the best. Like if you're taking a if you're walking down a trail and you decide to go left instead of right, and then after a while you go, oh, I don't know why I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Just make the best of it and make a course correction. But you, unfortunately, not like the trail analogy. You can't go back and take the other trail, right? I mean, you can, but
It's kind of like going down a river, maybe more,
yeah,
right? You take another stream, and
yeah,
that's it.
it's a little tough to swim back upstream and go the other way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to
No, it's a fair question,
put
and
anything I know it's a bit sensitive, but it sounds like, maybe there was some some embarrassment through that process, but where you are in your life, there's a lot of you found acceptance, maybe, and just like that, it was the part of your path of life.
yeah, and it's like what everybody I would think is it would be great if everybody could do the same thing where you get up and you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
So you turn down a road that maybe you think I don't know if that was maybe the best idea, but once you're on it, you don't go back. I mean,
Or you can't. Some things can't be undone.
you can't erase stuff. You don't get this isn't like a tape where you can erase it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, another. Maybe I'll go to this positive one before I go into this other one. Okay.
Sure.
All right. So, oh, this one actually is two-sided. All right. So, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment in your life?
Uh, Getting to 76 years old with all the positive memories that I have
Mm-hmm.
of and feeling like I led a good life and that there is no perfect life, but you either feel good about your life or you don't. And if you don't, you can change anytime, so that, at some point in the future, you can then reassess and go, yeah, well, I know there was this and this, but I'm happy with my life. I'm content, and um,
Is there like any specific events or moments where you look back and you're like, Bob, you did it, right on, or has like, is there any like, I guess the word that
well,
comes to mind, like a crowning achievement?
again, I sound like I'm sometimes making too much of this because it's not for everybody, but uh, decision to not just stop at grade 12, to carry on and get further education.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's one of the best decisions I ever made in my life, and it was a decision. I mean, you know,
We didn't really touch on this on some of those previous questions, but what did the ratio look like in high school of who was, say, continuing on to trade school, who wasn't continuing education, and how many people were like going to university?
well, okay, so I didn't move up to Kamloops until grade 11, and at that time when I was in Richmond in Steveston High School, um, I don't remember any talk at all about what the hell was going to happen after grade 12.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
And you
it
would,
just wasn't a part of the conversation, and it wasn't
yeah.
even part of my plan or even my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if somebody had asked me, I probably would have said, I don't have a clue.
So probably really low numbers in Richmond is how you
And
felt.
lower in East Vancouver,
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think I talked about this earlier. Excuse me for repeating myself for anybody who's listening. But when I got to Kamloops, for whatever reason, I gravitated towards these certain male individuals, probably a good half dozen of them, and every single one of them went to university. And it was like, well, you don't stop at grade 12 because, like, what's that going to mean? What are you going to do? What's your life going to be like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do remember one guy, and he actually is a friend of mine. He lives close by, and we go for coffee once in a while. And he didn't like university too much. I think he did try it, but he became an entrepreneur and very, very wealthy, opening video stores
Mm-hmm.
where you rented videos. He bought them, lots of them, and then he sold them at the right time because they're dead end now, right? I mean,
Yeah, they don't exist.
I don't even know if there is. There used to be one in Victoria, but I don't know if it's still open. But anyway, so
So I know so you did touch on her that your friend group was doing that, but I'm saying, I guess what I'm kind of trying to narrow in on is, do you feel like that was the general sentiment in say Kamloops or in your high school, or because like I think now like probably somewhere around 40% at least, I think, of kids when I went to high school, something around that was going to go to
further education.
further education. That's
Yeah.
right.
So, you on there?
Yeah, I just Canny just called. I'm just making sure.
So it's running though, right?
Yeah.
So that's okay. I don't think it was a large group. It wasn't a large group. It wasn't a large number. It wasn't over 50% or anything like that. I think it was, for some reason, I chose people when I moved to Kamloops in grade 11 and 12 and 13 that were planning on doing that. Yeah, but and I don't mean to downplay other decisions that people made because, it doesn't mean that was necessary for happiness, success, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just talking about my particular
Your life.
example,
Yeah.
my experience, and I did. To me, even today in 2024, to think that somebody's going to finish grade 12 and never get any training or experience in anything else. This doesn't seem like, as a dentist, I was learning all the time. When I graduated from dentistry, I didn't know how to do orthodontics. I didn't know how to do implants. So all those things were continuous, a result of continuous education and learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's an important thing to do. Not to say, well, I'm never going to take another course in my life.
A life of
I
learning.
graduated. I'm finished with learning.
Yeah.
And yet, I think there's too many people who decide to do that, and they get a job from somebody who is good enough to hire them, and they just
That's it.
I see more lack of ambition now than I did when I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
People are more ambitious. It's unfortunate, but hopefully it'll change. Things always change. So, I mean, this is an example of the Republican vice presidential nominee, Vance, J.D. Vance.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. His history, what he accomplished, and he's a young guy accomplishing something even more extraordinary, just running, 39 years old. His background doesn't happen very often, but it wasn't just luck. He did a lot of right things
Mm-hmm.
to get where he was, and I admire him.
And not to, I don't want to get too much on the subject of the day, but one of the really interesting things I listened to this morning on The Economist, they're talking about with this being Trump's second term, it would mean that J.D.
Yeah,
Vance
that's
would
right.
be the front runner and one of the youngest presidents in a long time of the United States.
Absolutely. It's going to be
In
close
2028.
It's going to be close whether he would be younger than Kennedy or not. I'm not sure. I remember Kennedy as being about 43 when he was elected, but he was young. So
And
yeah.
JD's 39, I believe.
Yeah, he's going to be 40.
43, 44.
A couple of weeks, he's going to be 40. I think. So anyway, let's not get too political.
Okay, so the other flip side of that question was, what was your biggest failure, you think?
Biggest failure?
You talked about your biggest accomplishment. What do you think was your biggest failure? Let's say. Yeah.
Biggest failure.
Is there like a big professional blunder you feel like you had, or personal, or spiritual even, or emotional? I don't know.
I don't think.
What comes to mind is like, man, that kind of set me back.
Well, I mean, nobody likes to fail. So anybody who's had a divorce has to think, let's be honest, it's a failure. So it doesn't help to dwell on it for too much time. But yeah, I my life would have been pretty different if that hadn't happened and I hadn't had 2 divorces. But like I said, when it happens, you just can't turn around and go, "Oh, let's redo that. Let's not accept that." You move on, and So I'm not sure it's so much a regret. Some degree of regret, but yeah, that's the only thing. Like, I've moved a lot of times. I've probably lived in 20-something places in my life, and pretty much without exception, I've loved them all. And if it's time for change, it's time for change. And anyway, does that answer the question? Have I answered
That's all right. That's all right. That's good. No, and I applaud your or admire your
Pick
courage.
yourself up.
Admire your courage and
keep going.
in recognizing maybe some places where you failed, and your fortitude in continuing. Um, so we kind of actually talked about this before the recording, but depending on
Mm.
what you want to talk about. So this question is, have you ever gotten into trouble with the law? And if you don't want to talk about anything, that's fine. Again, but if you do, you're welcome to. And then my
Yeah.
question would be like, what did you learn also after that,
What did I
right?
learn?
Like have you gotten in trouble with the law and maybe why or what did you take away from it? To start you off, if you don't mind, I remember my dad telling me a story once, which is very different than now. I think that you had a couple drinks at a friend's place or something in Kamloops
Yeah.
and driving home,
Mm.
and the you I guess maybe you weren't driving super straight, and the police kind of pulled you over and said, "Are you okay, Dr. McGinn, or anything?" But yeah, I'm just heading home, and I think my dad said something like he followed you guys home, and that was it. And I was like, "Okay, have a good night," just or get home safe or something. Um, but I don't know. You would obviously know that story better than I do. But that's
Well,
just something I can think of that I've heard when I was younger.
um, yeah, I don't know which one you that would be in connection with, uh, but
But I bring that up just because I know the view of that is very different nowadays than to what it was when we were, let's say, a young man. At least from what I can tell.
what's the question? What
Have you ever gotten into
trouble?
trouble with the law?
Well, yeah, I have. I mean, it was basically my weird difference of opinion on what was reportable income and what wasn't. So um, hard to see all the steps now of how I actually decided to do what I did. But I mean, for anybody looking for historical evidence, if you dig deep enough, yeah, you can look it up.
That's okay too. Um, all right. So let me just check the time here. I think we're getting close to the end, but we still have a little bit of time. Yeah. So
Sure.
we got a few more minutes. We're getting close to the end of this one. And the next question is, what's your favorite piece of a relationship advice you've either learned or been told or heard, and that you would want to say to someone else as they are in a relationship?
Okay. Well, my advice is that just to remember that there's always going to be bumps. And some of the bumps are pretty frequent, and some of them go on for way longer than you'd like. But it seems to me, and this isn't just an analogy in a relationship, if you hang in there long enough when things aren't going the way you want, they'll get harder and harder and harder and harder, and then there's a breakthrough.
Hmm.
That it always changes at a time when you don't know how you can keep going. It's it it's so I guess it's the commitment is a huge thing, uh, in whatever you do. It doesn't matter whether it's a vocational thing or anything you choose to do. You can have 100% commitment, or you can have some degree of less than that. But I find that the things that you feel most proud about sometimes, that you stuck it out and you kept going, they they happen after an enormous amount of difficulty.
Hmm.
And after that enormous length of time of difficulty, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, most people have given up. abandoned their goal, abandoned the relationship, whatever, and just haven't quite gone far enough to see it change drastically. So don't my I guess in a form of advice, don't expect to go through life without hard stuff happening, without disappointment, without things that are negative. But it doesn't mean you have to change the goal. It just
Mm-hmm.
means that in any goal, it just doesn't always go smoothly. And just because it's going really difficult doesn't mean it's not going to change. So sometimes you have to give up. Sometimes you have to say can't do it anymore. But don't do that easily.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you know? You, yeah, just don't do it too quick because you'll be giving up in many cases on things that have a wonderful future if you cannot just give up.
When you said that, it reminded me of a picture that I remember seeing once, and it's popped into my head. Was it's this guy, and he's digging a hole. Maybe you've seen some of this before, and he's digging, and I think he goes through like roots of a tree and everything. It's a cartoon though, right? And I think on the other side there's like a chest of gold or something, and he stops and turns around, and there's just a sliver of dirt left.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just kind of to say, like,
And
you don't know how far you've gone until
those are the times that change your life. And it happens if you happen to stop and do change your life. It doesn't mean you're going to have a very unhappy life or that you're going to always regret. But your decision to stop pursuing something will definitely change your life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that was well answered. Um, is there any major accomplishments that you didn't achieve in your life that you wish you did? Maybe that you had set for yourself, now that we kind of talked about that.
Um, Not really. I
That's
yeah
good.
yeah I pursued a lot of things and I think that I got I'm happy with my track record as far as accomplishing things I wanted to accomplish. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Um, I mean, you just can't always, the song. Uh, um,
The
you can't,
Rolling Stones one?
yeah, you
Yeah.
can't always get what you want,
Yeah.
but sometimes you get what you need. um, that's pretty profound philosophical advice. Um, so I, my only goals now is to try and assist my not just my family but my friends in accomplishing what they're going after. You know, uh, I see people at different stages, and I can see, well, yeah, they seem like they're struggling. How can I help? And that's a tough one in itself because sometimes you don't even know whether you should be saying anything because
Mm-hmm.
it's their life. But then you know I I I value everything that my elders, particularly my grandmothers, said to me, and there's not much they didn't say to me that I don't still have in my head because uh, I always listened, and it affected who I was and who I became. So um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I mean, I've been very fortunate, as you know, with grandparents and even great grandparents. There's a unique relationship between grandparents and grandchildren in that
Mm-hmm.
they're removed from, let's say, the immediate control or responsibility, but generally they always have the best interest in mind, and they have more experience than the parent. They've seen things unravel differently well into a life longer.
Yeah, and I think as a grandparent, you're able to communicate in a different way and have a different effect on grandkids than you do on your own kids. Your kids always have a tendency to say in their head, even unconsciously, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but should I rebel or not?
Yeah, should I
Should it,
challenge that?
yeah, is that what do I think of that? But but when it gets to grandparents, you hear it at a different place in your brain, and in my experience, things that my grandmother said to me, uh, a lot of it stuck, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was like just listening to the person and sort of assessing them as to why they were saying that, and uh, I listen in a way a lot more closely to my grandmothers than I did to my parents, but it was certainly it was a different way, and maybe it's because they've got more experience. You're not just talking about somebody who are parents. You're talking about somebody who's been able to look back at how their own kids reacted, developed, and is speaking with more experience because they do have more experience.
And they have the experience of their parents and their grandparents.
Absolutely, yeah. So,
I think, a little cheesy, but it's kind of like what you said about that Rolling Stones song. Maybe your parents always kind of give you advice they want or whatnot, but a grandparent may have the ability to kind of just focus on maybe what is it that person needs to hear right now, or to do to try to maybe, like you said, mentor
yeah,
them to help them.
you're not so much committed to being careful about what you say because you want to say the right thing. Eh, you're I both of my grandmothers way more open about answers to questions, or even in conversation. Like they're not on guard.
Mm-hmm.
They're not always thinking, oh, what should I say to how should I answer that? They just do. Whereas parents
It's like
parents see their job as guiding their child super seriously and are always thinking about, oh, what should I say? What's the
mm-hmm.
best thing to do? So it's a totally different relationship.
And sometimes, like you said, there's like a little bit of a power dynamic between the child and the parent, and
Sure.
who's right, who's not.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, at least how I feel with the grandparent, uh, even myself, sometimes I may slightly rebel against the grandparent, but it's quite solidified the relationship, right? It's like,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's an hour.
Okay.
Let's take a break. We'll see if we'll do more. But I like to keep these at 1 hour, and we can move on with the next questions either later
Still going.
or
Is it still going?
yeah, still going, or maybe next week. Let's see.
Well, I don't care. It's up to you. I gotta pee.
All right,
Is that on there?
it's on there.
Oh.